guys, so here's a track that I've made. I'm not sure when it will be released, but if you want the download, just leave a comment and I'll send it to you. So there's this new wave of dance music that's happening that's being played by Kettama, Bushbaby, IPC. It's kind of a hybrid between garage and house and 90s acid house. It seems to be really something that's fresh and current and currently taking the clubs. I'm calling it new generation club music, if you like. I'm just going to run through the things that I've done here and show you what I've done and why it's working. So really the pioneer of this right now is my good buddy Tom the Chef. And you can watch mine and his podcast out on my channel that I released a few weeks back. So you can actually buy the preset and also the drums. I'll put the link in the comments so you can follow along the tutorial as well. That being said, let's run through the bass. So the actual bass pattern, it's a pretty simple housey bass pattern that is pretty common. I mean, it's not so important, the bass pattern in this. To be honest with you, it's all very simple. What makes it really good is the accents that happen on some of the notes, and getting it right is pretty hard. One thing that I suggest doing is getting a reference track that you really like, downloading it, putting it into your session, listening to the bass pattern that they're using and what kind of bass they're using, and using the techniques that you're learning from them to do it in your own way, not copying, just doing it in your own way. For this I tried a few patterns and came to this conclusion, which is just my main bass. I'm layering two basses, it's the same bass, this one and this one. Now the only difference between the two basses is that one is playing in mono and the other one is playing in stereo. Now the main reason I do this is because on club speakers they are mono, so the main components in your stereo image is going to want to be centered, including the kick and the bass and the snare. This makes it punch through those speakers. It's also really nice when Reese basses have a chorus effect on them, which essentially makes it wider. So when you're listening to headphones, cars or speakers that are in stereo, you get this wide image, and for streaming platforms it's really effective. So what I've done here is duplicate the bass, so one's in mono only and the other one is affecting the wide image. The way I do it randomly is just using Guitar Rig because it instantly makes it mono unless I press the stereo. You can use any plugin, it's just a weird way of that I like doing it. Another thing that I'm doing to the patch is using a comb filter at these settings. This gives it that really nice re-spaced sound that you're hearing in a lot of garage tunes. I'm also applying a kickstart as we've got a fall to the floor kick happening. It's important that you sidechain all of your basses to the kick. This gives it that bounce. Now the actual patch is this, and it's part of the project pack that I'm selling. Now the layers are super important. Let's have a listen to the accents. Now I'm not putting these into the pack, and the reasons are these are actually presets that I've bought separately and I don't think it's legal to resell them. But one thing that you can do, which is super effective and something that I've done, is go onto Splice and find stabs or bass stabs that are playing the same note as what's playing in my main bass, and then layering them on the main bass. As you can see here, I've got one on the first note, I've got one at the very end of the bar, I've got one on the end of the bar again here, and one on the first note in the final 4 bars. And I'm basically repeating that again. This is actually a tech house technique. Something that they use regularly on their basses is to accent certain hits in the bass in order to add variation. Well, this is what's separating just a normal song, what's separating a song that has a good groove to it. The ones that are capturing your attention, they're keeping you on edge, they're making you want to stay and listen to the song. All of these accents have sidechain on them, by the way. And another very cool effective technique that I like to use is adding reverb throws on some of these accents. For instance, I've done it here. So it comes in right up and then cuts off when the next note in the bass plays, which is here. A very common technique. It adds this momentum, this almost like whip effect, and keeps it nice and clean so that the reverb isn't going into the next section. You can do the same in your basses by tweaking the reverbs or the release times in your basses, and this helps create that momentum. There are other things that you can do, like add distortion and automate it in at certain hits. This keeps the bass rolling, this keeps it very effective. So in all, for the bass you have a main rhythm and things that are accenting it. Now I group each of the instrumentation elements and put them into its own effects rack. its own group. That way I can affect everything equally so that it glues together. One of the things I like to do is add distortion on the groups, and also I clip it to bring up that perceived loudness, which is really important. For this, I actually added distortion, but it didn't make it sound very good. So I put the distortion, the saturation, on a send track here. Put a free saturator there, and also a max bass. Just send it over there to affect it at these settings, so it's not coming in too much. It's tastefully saturating the bass. Now the free clip is really important because it's bringing up that perceived loudness. As we can see here, it's peaking at 10.1, but if I take it off, it's actually going up to 2.3. And what that does in my overall headroom when I'm going into the master is make it peak louder than it should be. It's not giving me as much headroom to work with. Now I'm not squishing the bass, it doesn't sound squished. I'm just clipping it so that it reaches a certain threshold without peaking too heavy, so I've got the headroom to play with in my master chain. Well, let's go to the drums. Various different elements are happening here. I've got a kick, a hat on the offbeat. These are 3 layered hats. I like to layer my hats and put them slightly off of grid. See here, they're happening just behind the beat each time it hits. Now the reason is because I want to create swing in my drums, and I'm layering hats to get my own specific tone. It makes it sound thicker and more rich, really makes it stand out. I've also got these accented hats happening. I've got a couple of claps. I've got this offbeat rim that's happening. And then I've just got one top loop, not overcomplicating it. And I've got this smash effect that happens on beat 1. These are samples that I've put into the pack. What's happening on the drum bus? I've got a glue compressor at a slow attack and fast release time. Why do I do that? Well, I want the punchiness of the drums to come through without squishing it. This is an effective technique used for a very long time, not just in house, but in a lot of genres, so that the main punch of your drums can come through. Next, I've got a saturator, a bit of sausage fattener, I happen at a very, very low, and then again, I've got this clipper that is bringing up the perceived loudness. So by not having it go above a certain gain threshold, I'm allowing the perceived loudness to come up and give myself headroom in the mix again so that I can push the master, which is what makes my mixes sound loud. If you do it too much, and you do it with a limiter or compressor, you can end up squishing the signal, so you have to listen to it and do it tastefully. The send effects, I actually have a UAD 76, and it's doing a parallel drum compression. Parallel drums is where you put the drum bus through a send and put it through a compressor that's smashing, and then you affect it slightly. This gives it a whole different element. Again, something used in multiple genres, not just dance. The next send that's happening is this Waves plugin. It's a transient designer. What it's doing is increasing the punch of the drums, and I'm sending it to it rather than affecting the whole signal directly. And this is adding some more punch. The vocals. This is actually a splice sample that is in an R&B pack. I've just cut it and then changed it tastefully. With this type of genre, the vocals aren't necessarily the main important part. Your production is going to be what carries the track. So having a vocal sample that plays repetitively is actually really super effective. Now some creative effects I've added to this because the sample was already well mixed. I'm taking away all of those. I'm adding a chorus, which is making it sound wider. I'm adding this scanner vibrato, which is a Logic thing. What these effects are doing, to me, is making it sound like it was recorded in a warehouse. It's got that robotic kind of metallic feel. And you do that through creative effects. Another thing I'm doing is adding saturation and this chromoverb reverb on a room setting, which is giving it again that warehouse feel. Then I'm putting a free clipper on it for that perceived loudness, and some sidechain, and it's giving it that bounce. In the second part of my drop, to add momentum, I've got a string playing, and I've also got this pad. Now the pad is playing the same rhythm as the bass, and all it actually is a 7th chord pitched up and down. That's what the chords are made up of in this acid house / garage scene that's happening right now. You can create a 7th chord from the root note and then pitch that up and down, or extensions such as 9ths or 11ths, perhaps even 13s, and then you invert some of the notes. I've talked about this in multiple videos, and I also talk about it in my course, how to build your own chords, but for the sake of this, all I'm doing is pitching up and down a 7th chord. As for the build, in the build I'm playing that same pad here. All I've done was turn down some of that brightness, the high end, so it sounds a little bit different. The reason is we want to make the drop as much impactful as possible, so one of the things you can do to make your drops really impactful is take away a lot of the high end in the builds, so it feels like you're moving in momentum. You sacrifice some things in the build to make your drop sound more impactful. It's playing the same rhythm as the bass. I've also got the same vocals playing, just less, and it's giving you a teaser of what's about to happen. And I've got this sample at the end, which is a splice sample that I've cut up, which is a man talking, and I've put it through a telephone EQ so that it sounds like he's speaking on a telephone. And on the effects, I put a telephone just before it, and also these scratch effects playing into the drop. One of the other things I've liked to do, which is a new technique I found myself doing more and more, is to make your track mono before you go into the chorus, and then the chorus can come back into stereo. For instance, on my stereo out, I've actually automated in a direction mixer. On the spread section of it, I've automated it in so that in the build, it goes towards the mono. Not all the way, just at this setting. So it feels like it's closing in. And then back when you hit the chorus, it's back to being stereo. Another thing I like to do is sacrifice some of the dB on my build so the drop can become more impactful as well. I've sacrificed 2 dB and then made it go lower to about 2.7, and then when the drop comes in, it's back to 0. Again, sacrificing things in your build is super important. Section may not sound as good as you'd like it to, but it's not about that. It's about having an impactful drop, something that smacks in the clubs, something that when you're listening to it, it makes you really take notice. Another effect for that is using dB automation. In terms of structure, well, you can play around with structure, but for DJs and sets, it's super important. Normally the way I like to run through it is have a 16 bar intro, 16 bar build, 32 bar drop, followed by a 16 bar build 2, and a 32 bar final drop, and then a 16 bar outro. This gives the DJs a lot of time to integrate the tracks in and out. One of the things I will say to do is grab a reference track, listen to what's happening and where, break down the sections of the reference track, and then use it in your own way. Again, I talk about structure in a lot more depth in the structure part of my course, which I'll link in the description as well. Now, this specific genre is better when it's more simple and raw, but it is also hard to get right. One of the reasons why I was able to get this right is because I use reference tracks, but I also have been doing it for a very long time. If you're someone who's getting frustrated with your productions, you're maybe not reaching the level you want to reach. One of the main ways that I learned was collaborating with other producers and also having mentors. What having mentors does is elevate your production very, very quickly. I've spent 10 years learning music production, but learned quickest when I was collaborating and learning off mentors. And if you haven't got 10 years to spend learning music production, investing in yourself is going to be super, super important. I went to uni and done a master's degree, but honestly, if I had a mentor to just pay, I would have just done it. Hence why I'm offering a mentorship at the moment. As my channel's growing, I'm getting more and more interest, and I'm working with a few people and their productions are elevating at a top level at the moment. If this is something that you're interested in, you can pop me an email and include in the email a paragraph about where you're at with your music production. Also include a link of one of your tracks and what you're looking to get out of a mentorship, or we can work together. If you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe.